Thanks today from TJ Severino and Julia Cox, both from Clemson Extension, who will be moderating the chat box today. And so today it's everybody's favorite topic, snakes, their identification, their environmental importance. And Vicky Bertagnolli from Clemson Extension, thank you for hosting this webinar today, and we're going to turn it over to you. Guys, if you have a question during the webinar, feel free to make a comment or whatever you would like in the chat box. If you have a specific question, you can type it in the Q&A if you would like. And so, Miss Vicky, thank you.
All righty, thanks. So this is a really fun topic. I give this class to my master gardeners, and so this is going to be, just so y'all know, this is very southeastern heavy, because that's what we have down here, and that's what I know. So what's kind of funny is, I don't know if funny is the right word, maybe interesting. So TJ is one of the moderators on here, and we were talking about snake ID not too long ago, and there was a quote that he said, "I have found that the difficulty in identifying snakes is directly proportional to the number of pieces to which it has been reduced." And that really is how, whenever folks bring us snakes or they send us pictures, they're always in pieces. They always kill them first. And that's not something that we want to do. And, you know, it's human nature to fear what we do not understand. And snakes scare us. We learn early on that snakes are supposedly scary, but at least 20% of the U.S. population suffers from some degree of snake fear. And really and truly, this fear is unnecessary. Encounters are relatively infrequent. At the University of Florida, Dr. Steve Johnson did some statistics, and he was asking what are his chances of being bitten by especially a venomous snake in the United States. And you can look at this graph, and it compares deaths from venomous snake bites to some other leading causes of death, including lung cancer, vehicle accidents, lightning strikes, hornets, bees, wasp stings, dog bites or dog attacks, spider bites. Can you see where snake bites are? So the chances of dying from a venomous snake bite in the United States are nearly zero, because we have high quality medical care in the U.S. and fewer than one in, it's about 37,500 people are bitten by venomous snakes in the U.S. each year. So that's 7,000 to 8,000 bites per year, and only 1 in 50 million are going to die from that snake bite. So 5 or 6 fatalities per year. You're actually more likely to die by a lightning strike than you are by a venomous snake bite. So whenever you're looking at the statistics, and it has to do with snake bites, and especially death rates too, snakes account for, like I said, about 5.5 per year. More than 7,000 bites are reported, and half of them are envenomations. So there's dry bites. And what is a dry bite? So a dry bite is when there's no venom injected, or the venom is prematurely expelled from the fangs before they actually puncture the skin. So all venomous snakes can deliver dry bites, and the estimates show that 20 to 25% of the pit viper bites and 50% of the coral snake bites are dry bites. So it's really not a big factor whenever, if you are going to be bitten, there's a good chance you may not be actually being venomated. Half of the people bitten, it's because they've handled the snake. And 2/3 of those people saw the snake before they got bitten. And then when they did a survey of the people that got bitten, they were white males and young adults between 18 and 28 years old. Those were the people that were most frequently bitten. In my head, it's kind of one of those, hey, y'all watch this type things. I don't know if that's true, but this is the the demographic that they found were being most frequently bitten. If you do happen to be bitten by a snake, there are some things that you don't want to do. So you don't want to eat or drink anything, including alcohol, or take any medication, unless it's been advised by the doctor. And then this is one of those things that if you are bitten by a snake, responding correctly to that snake bite is really important. So you want to do these things. So don't eat or drink anything. You don't want to physically exert yourself beyond what is necessary to get to the hospital. Do not apply hot or cold compresses. Do not cut or incise the bite marks with a blade. And this is something that we've all heard, that you want to try to suck the venom out, and you don't actually want to do that. You can actually make it spread and make things worse. Do not apply a constrictive tourniquet. Do not apply any electrical shock, and don't kill or capture the offending snake. You can take pictures, but you don't want to go after that snake because you may end up getting bitten again. What you do want to do is attempt to stay calm. And I know it's easier said than done because you've been bitten by a snake, but you want to try to stay calm. You want to lie down, keep the bitten body part at or below heart level. One of the things you want to do is remove anything that could be constricting, like rings or watches, any kind of tight clothing, so belts, things with elastic, stuff like that. Try to identify the snake, but like I said before, don't kill it or capture it. And then you want to get to the nearest hospital as quickly as possible. So now that I've scared you talking about snake bites, I do want to tell you that snakes are actually extremely beneficial, and they play a major role in ecosystems. So they are both predator and prey in the food web. They prey on eels, other snakes, insects, fish, frogs, lots of rodents, birds, other nuisance species. And in doing this, they reduce disease potential. This is very evident whenever it comes to rodents. They're removing rodents that could be spreading hantavirus or Lyme disease. And then whenever I said that they serve both as predator, but they also serve as prey for hawks, great blue herons, opossums, dogs, cats, raccoons, rats, larger reptiles. And then with snakes, it's really unique. They are bioindicators to assess pollutants in terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, because they accumulate toxins, and they're a toxin indicator, especially of mercury. And David Haskins recently published snakes as novel biomarkers of mercury contamination, and that was with Dr. Tracy Tuberville. And this was just on SREL, which is the Savannah River Ecology Lab with the University of Georgia. This was just on their Facebook page and their Instagram, I don't know, maybe 2 days ago. So this is a really big deal. And sadly, the survival of a lot of our snakes is threatened by development, road mortality, and persecution by humans. And so we need to safely deal with and get along with snakes, and you can reduce your risk of being bitten by allowing snakes to fulfill their role in the environment. So what is a snake? On the internet, I've heard it called a couple things. There's a danger noodle, there's a nope rope, but really and truly, this is it's an elongate, legless, carnivorous reptile thought to have evolved from lizard-like ancestors about 130 million years ago. Well, I mentioned legless lizards up here, or lizards, and then there is such a thing as a legless lizard. So this one on the left over here, you know that this is a legless lizard because it does have movable eyelids, inflexible jaws, and you can see ear openings down here. Over here on the right, this is a juvenile snake, and you see that it does lack eyelids and there's no external ears. So that's how you know the difference between a legless lizard and a snake. And we do have a number of legless lizards here in the Southeast. Now you know that because it's a reptile, it's cold-blooded, and they're affected by extremes of heat and cold. But whenever it's cold, they stop moving about 32 degrees, so they can get pretty cool. You can make sweaters for them if you want to. So according to the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, South Carolina and Georgia have among the highest biodiversity of snakes in the United States. 46 species between the two snakes. 6 of them are venomous, and there's 5 pit vipers in there, and there's 2 that are threatened. That's the eastern indigo and the southern hognose. And when we're talking about pit vipers get their name from those heat-sensitive pits found on each side of their face. Those are going to be the copperhead, the cottonmouth, which is also known as the water moccasin, the eastern diamondback, the canebrake or timber rattler, and then there's the pygmy rattlesnake. And we're going to talk about most of these. One of the things that I want y'all to know is I want you to use the terminology correctly. So a lot of folks refer to snakes as being poisonous, and they're not actually poisonous. They're venomous, and there's a difference. So the guys at Snake Buddies made this great graphic, and this is one of my very favorite things. So when we're talking about something being poisonous or having poison, poison is a modified compound that's derived from microorganisms or other chemicals that are absorbed when either touched, swallowed, or inhaled. And poison is going to be excreted from glands or pores on that body. So you can see that the guy is dead because he bit the poisonous frog. Over here on the right, there's the guy is dead because he was bitten by the snake. And venom is modified saliva or compound that is injected through fangs or spines via a bite or a sting. And venom can be used as a defense aid or to aid in the capture of food. When we're trying to tell the difference between venomous snakes and non-venomous snakes tend to have a rounded head, whereas venomous snakes are going to have a triangular shaped head. And they have that triangular shaped head because that's where those venom glands are found. When you're looking at their mouths, non-venomous snakes are not going to have fangs present. They're going to have, sometimes they have little tiny teeth. And then with venomous snakes, they're going to have fangs present. They'll fold back into the mouth, but there's a tube that runs through the fangs to the venom glands so that whenever the snake bites you, they can squeeze these venom glands and then inject venom into the prey. When you look at the eyes and you look at their pupils, non-venomous snakes are going to have round pupils, and venomous snakes are going to have elliptical pupils. And then if we flip this thing over and it hasn't bitten us yet, and we're going to start looking at their anal plates, non-venomous snakes are going to have a double row of anal plates, and venomous snakes are going to have a single row of anal plates. The first species of snake that we're going to look at is the eastern garter snake. And this is one of the most commonly encountered snakes in suburban areas. It'll usually get about 2 feet, but can get a little bit longer. But they're easy to identify because they have these 3 yellow stripes on a dark colored background body. And they've also got these little black lines on their lip scales. They're either going to have a white or yellow belly, but they're active during the day or the night, and they're active all through the year. Whenever they have babies, there's going to be about up to 50, maybe more, live young. They feed on worms, frogs, toads, salamanders, fish, tadpoles, all sorts of stuff in our yards. Our next snake is the eastern king snake. This one is 3 to 4 feet long and it's shiny black. And something that I'll tell you guys, whenever you look at these slides, if you'll look up in the top left corner, I will designate if it's non-venomous or if it's venomous. So this is another non-venomous snake, and it's shiny black with white or yellow chain link bands that cross the back and connect along the sides, and it has one of the largest geographic ranges of any North American snake. This king snake is active almost exclusively during the day. It's a very strong constrictor. It preys on other snakes, lizards, rodents, birds, turtle eggs. And this one is resistant to pit viper venom. So you are going to see this one going after some venomous snakes. It will rattle its tail and release a musk, and it may bite if it's handled, but they tend to tame quickly. Our next non-venomous snake is a corn snake. And you guys have seen this one. A lot of people, especially education centers, will have a corn snake specimen to take around to show as an educational specimen. These tend to be 3 to 4 feet long, orange to reddish brown, gray, and they've got squarish black margins, these blotches on their backs, and they've got a checkered belly. That checkered belly is a good identifying characteristic of the corn snake. They're active both day and night, but they tend to be nocturnal in the summer months. This is a constrictor that feeds on small mammals, birds, and reptiles. And as you can see in the picture to the right, they are excellent climbers. So sometimes that's a surprise when you're looking up in a tree. Our next snake is a venomous snake. This is called the copperhead, and this one can get 2 to 3 feet long. It's light brown to pinkish with a dark hourglass cross band, but the head is going to be a solid brown, so people say it's copper colored. And these things have litters every other year. There's 7 to 10 young, and they're opportunistic feeders. They use something called caudal luring. Well, they'll use their tail as like a bait. They'll wiggle it around and try to lure in mice, small birds, lizards, other snakes, amphibians to use as prey. And if you'll look on here, I don't know if y'all know this, but copperheads are responsible for the majority of snake bites. Out of the 6 venomous species of snakes that we have in the southeast, copperheads are number 1. So if you look in this picture, I know it's a little blurry, but if you look in this picture, can you see that copperhead? Look right here in the middle. So what happens is that you're walking through the woods and you go to step over a rock or step over a log, you can't see on the other side of it, and you end up stepping on this thing. That's how most of the time people step on these. So let's have a little test. Where are these copperheads in these 2 pictures? They're hidden pretty well, aren't they? Here's one over here on the left. Now tell me, did y'all see that? Really? What about this one over here on the right? Look at this. That is great camo, isn't it? That's why snakes are patterned the way they are. That's how they're such good hunters. But this is one reason why copperheads are one of the most, people step on these all the time, and this is why folks get bitten by these things. So now that I talked about the scary snake, I'm going to show y'all a more fun snake. This is the non-venomous eastern hognose snake. This one's a little bit smaller, 20 to 23 inches, and it's got a snout on it. It's called a hognose. It's got a little turned up nose, and it's got a thick neck, and this thing is usually spotted. It's got 3 rows of spots on its back. The background can be yellow, gray, brown, green, or black, but it'll have these large rectangular spots down the middle. The belly is going to be a little bit lighter than the back. These things are sexually mature at 2 years old. They'll deposit 15 to 25 eggs in a little sandy depression, and they'll incubate it for a couple months. This is a juvenile over here. Isn't it cute? The southern hognose, very similar to the eastern hognose. This one's always gray or tan, and these blotches down the center of the back, they're going to alternate with smaller blotches along the sides. And this one is never solid black like the eastern hognose can be. So some of these snakes, what you should know is that depending on the region that they're located in, they can be darker, they can be lighter, they can be more colorful, have more pattern. But this one in particular, the difference between the southern and the eastern is that this one's never going to be black. So the hognose in general, they feed almost exclusively on toads, and they're immune to that toad poison. And they've got these fangs that they help them puncture toads whenever they inflate themselves. So toads will blow up, not explode, but they'll puff up in an effort to not get eaten by a snake. It makes them hard to swallow. But hognoses have these fangs that are used to puncture these toads so that they can actually swallow them. The hognose are kind of fun. I don't encourage you to harass the wildlife, but hognose they're divas, really. They'll play dead. I mean, a huge display. They'll flop over, flatten their neck. Their tongue will be flopping around. Sometimes it's like they're in the death agonals. And then you leave it alone for a little while, it'll flip over and slither right off. I mean, they put on a really great show. This is the pygmy rattlesnake. This is a venomous snake. We've got two subspecies around here. There's the Carolina pygmy and the dusky pygmy. Very attractive little rattlesnake. Heavy bodied, but it's very small. Usually less than about a foot. They've got tiny rattles on them. This is not a rattlesnake where you can depend on hearing the rattle to warn you, because a lot of times they're going to hold one or two buttons on the end of their tails and you cannot hear that thing. But they're gray. They've got a gray background with some black squares on their backs. A lot of times they're going to have this orange or pink stripe down the back, and they're going to be solid black around their mouth. These are ambush hunters that spend a lot of time well hidden amongst the leaf litter. They feed on mice, lizards, snakes, frogs, insects, and centipedes. And I tell you what, this snake, we were on a mammalogy trip, I believe at Cheehaw, and we had some small metal traps where we were catching rodents. And we picked up this trap, and it didn't make the same sound as the other ones did. You could hear the rodent in there scurrying around, and this one sounded different. Whenever you moved the trap around, something in it slid, and we were like, yeah. So Dr. Troy Best was our instructor, and he told us, he said, don't use your finger to open the door. Use a pencil to open the door. Always use a pencil to open the door. So we used a pencil and pushed down the door, and sure enough, there was a pygmy rattlesnake in the back of the trap. So it was a tiny little thing. I mean, it was in a rodent trap. Now, we do have two snakes in our area that can grow 5 feet or more in our area. There's the black rat snake, and then there's the black racer. Rat snakes, typically 3 to 5 feet, can be 6 feet, shiny black. They're methodical, they're slow moving, and this is sometimes called the chicken snake. It primarily eats mice, rats, squirrels, birds, bird eggs, a common predator on wood duck eggs. And this is actually a very good climber. And they have a kinked posture and sit motionless when they're frightened. Sometimes they'll vibrate their tail and expel a musk whenever they're frightened. We've got several ones here in our area. We've got the black rat snake. Characteristically, when you look at this thing, it's black on top with a little bit lighter colored between some of the scales. And this is found in the mountains and the Piedmont regions of our areas. Then you've got a yellow rat snake. This one's greenish yellow or orange. It's got 4 dark stripes running the length of the body. This one's going to be found along the coast. And then we've got a gray rat, and this one is dark to light gray with darker brown or gray blotches, and this is found in southern Georgia and along the Savannah River. This one's primarily active at night, and these are all non-venomous. Then you have their look-alike, which is the southern black racer. Can be 3 to 5 feet. This one's a dull black snake, whereas your rat snakes tend to be they tend to be a little bit shinier. Now your black racer, whenever you look at it, look at this picture down here in the bottom right. Can you see that white chin? That's one of the ways that you identify a black racer. These are very agile, and most of the time these things are going to run. Well, I guess they can't run. They will flee whenever they're approached. Sometimes they will stand their ground and make a big scene and strike. But these things hunt by sight, and their prey is not constricted. They're consuming them outright. The southern black racer can have up to 36 eggs in the early summer. They hatch in the late summer, and the juveniles are going to be gray with reddish brown blotches that fade to a solid colored tail. Now, a lot of snakes have lookalikes. This is one of them. This is the venomous eastern cottonmouth in the top right, and on the bottom left, you've got a water snake. Water snakes very often get confused for cottonmouths. So this brown water snake, we actually find them all over the place. They're extremely abundant. They inhabit most permanent bodies of water. Fairly large, pretty heavy bodied. Whenever you look at these things, they're light to dark brown with large dark brown square blotches. They feed primarily on fish, especially small catfish, and they'll bask up to 20 feet above the water. So they're going to be sitting in the trees, and they'll drop when they're startled. And I had this happen. We were kayaking, and one of them dropped right out of a tree in my boat, and I almost killed myself trying to get out of the boat. But these things, they're actually harmless. They will strike and bite, but it's not a big deal. This one, on the other hand, is a big deal. This is the eastern cottonmouth, also known as the water moccasin. And the reason they are called a cottonmouth is because of the threat display. Look what happens. So besides the fact that the snake will coil up, it's going to open its mouth extremely wide and expose the white mucousy looking membranes on the inside of its mouth. Cottonmouths are semi-aquatic, so they're going to be found at or near the water, 24 to 48 inches long, pretty heavy bodied. A lot of times they're going to stick to the cypress swamps, the floodplains, heavily vegetated wetlands. They'll bask in the sun, but they're rarely going to climb a tree. So that's going to be one of your identifying characteristics. If you're floating down a river in a boat and you see a snake way up in the tree, very likely it's going to be a water snake. Cottonmouths are opportunistic feeders. They feed on both aquatic and terrestrial prey, and they will also use caudal luring. So you can see this bright yellow tail on this juvenile right here. They'll wiggle it around trying to bring in their prey. This is one of the scarier snakes that we have around. This is the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. This is one of our largest of 32 recognized rattlesnake species, 3 to 5 feet long. On record, the longest one is 8 feet, 96 inches, 8 feet. These things are slow moving. They're black, brown, gray with darker diamonds outlined in white or yellow on their back. And there's a diagonal stripe on the side of the head. And the tip of the tail is going to be black with rattles. And when we're talking about snakes and their venom, a comparative study found that snake venom is most toxic to mice. So that's what they used as a test subject. But the most toxic snake that they were finding is the inland taipan found in Australia. The most toxic venom of United States species belongs to the eastern diamondback, although the snake is only ranked as number 23 on the list of most toxic venoms. These are ambush hunters, and they feed almost exclusively on mammals, especially mice, rats, squirrels. They like rabbits too. Another venomous snake that we have in our area is a timber snake, a timber rattler, or a canebrake. And these are pretty heavy bodied, 3 to 4 feet, can be up to 6 feet, but we usually see them in the 3 to 4 foot range. So there's a debate whether there's two different species here, whether it's a canebrake or whether it's a timber rattler, and right now they're just, or subspecies. So right now they're just kind of calling it timber/canebrake. When you look at these things, the canebrakes, they're gray. Sometimes they'll have a pink hue. They'll have a stripe down their back. The timber rattlers are going to be brown, yellow, black. But both of them have a solid black tail, and both of them have black chevrons that point forward toward the head. These things don't reach maturity for about 5 years, but whenever they do, they'll be breeding in late summer, early fall. There's 2 to 3 years between litters, and they're going to be common in sparsely settled or forested areas. This picture happens to be one of my friends. This is right up next to his house. These are mostly ambush hunters. They feed on small rodents, squirrels, rabbits, and infrequently on ground-dwelling birds. Now, like I told you earlier, we have a lot of look-alikes. So these two pictures right here, which one's the coral snake and which one's the king snake? You know? On the left is the coral snake. On the right is the king snake. So you guys have heard, red on yellow, kill a fella. Red on black, good for Jack. The eastern coral snake is a venomous snake. It gets 20 to 30 inches long. They're glossy, shiny, and the end of their nose is going to be black. Their head has a broad yellow ring around it. Can y'all see that in the picture in the top right? Big yellow ring, black nose. This thing feeds on other snakes, lizards, frogs, and a lot of times they're not going to coil and strike, and they're likely to bite if they're restrained. So as I told you before, don't harass the wildlife. The eastern coral snake, one of the things that it will do as a threat display is, you can see in this picture right here that it's going to raise its tail up and curl it whenever they feel threatened. Sometimes they'll flop it around a little bit. The scarlet king snake, or the eastern milk snake, is a non-venomous snake that looks very similar to your eastern coral snake. This snake is 14 to 20 inches long, and it's also shiny, but the end of its nose is going to be red. Can you see the difference? Got a little red nose. This one is going to feed on snakes, lizards, frogs, and they prefer to hide in rotting stumps and logs, and they'll also vibrate their tails when alarmed. They'll hiss and strike, but they don't put up a fight very long, and they tend to tame pretty quickly. These two right here, there's a scarlet king snake in one picture and a scarlet snake in the other picture. Which is which? Because both of them have red noses. The scarlet king snake is on the top and the scarlet snake is on the bottom. Scarlet snakes are actually very small, 14 to 20 inches long. They've got a pointed red nose and a white belly. And the thing is that their pattern doesn't wrap around all the way to the bottom. So when you're looking at these two snakes right here, the scarlet king snake, that pattern goes all the way to the belly. And the hint on this bottom picture that this is a scarlet snake is that I picked a picture where the head is raised up. So you can see right here under its mouth, the very anterior part of the snake, that the pattern does not go all the way around to its belly. And then also back here, you can, toward the back end of the snake, you can see that the pattern doesn't go all the way around to the belly. This thing prefers reptile eggs, small lizards, snakes, frogs. Now, as county agents, we get a lot of phone calls and folks want to use repellents. They want to use eggshells because they're sharp and it'll scratch their bellies, or they want to put lime out because it's going to burn the snakes. They want to put fertilizer out because it's going to burn the snakes. They want to put hair out because snakes don't like the smell of human hair, animal hair. People want to put out urine. They want to put coyote urine or human urine too, to use as a repellent. And a lot of times these repellents don't work. They may work for a short period of time, but they're going to break down quickly in the environment. If it rains, if you've got irrigation, they just break down a lot and they tend not to work well. So we've got some other ideas on how to manage snakes. Now, first off, if you do have a snake that's up around where you are, you don't want to handle that snake before you properly identify it. And you don't want to pick it up to identify it. Take pictures. Our phones these days, a lot of us have smartphones, and you know, we can take great pictures with these things, and you don't have to hold the phone close to the subject to take a good picture. You want to use caution whenever you're moving logs or vegetation or rocks, or anything that can provide shelter in your landscape. Be careful whenever you're picking up tarps. You know, folks just snatch a tarp off of a log pile, and you can't do that. There could be snakes in there. There could be spiders in there. It could be wasps in there. It could be yellow jackets. Could be all sorts of stuff. So be careful out there. You want to avoid placing your hands and your feet in potential hiding places. So if you keep shoes on the back porch, make sure that you bang the shoes out or smash them before you just stick your feet in there. If you've got gloves, maybe you leave them in a mailbox or in a pail outside. Your yard gloves, don't just stick your hands in there. You want to make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to bite you. Make sure that you are wearing proper footwear whenever you're outside. I know the weather's nice and we want to wear flip-flops and sandals, but sometimes if you're going to be out hiking, it's going to be smart if you're wearing clothes that are going to prevent snakes from biting you and coming into contact with your feet and your legs. Juvenile snakes are not harmless. And as a matter of fact, juvenile snakes are actually more harmful than adult snakes. So juvenile snakes, especially venomous ones, can't necessarily control their venom glands like an adult can. So juvenile snakes can envenomate you, and you need to be careful with those. Also, just because a snake is injured or it's freshly dead does not mean that it can't bite anymore. It can still bite. So be mindful if you're going to end up handling a freshly killed snake or if you're trying to wrangle one that may be injured. And then whenever it comes to snake management, especially around your house, you want to cut off food supplies. This is a huge thing. So if you've got bird feeders up, besides the fact you're calling in birds, you're going to have, that means you're calling in squirrels, which means you could also be calling in rats and mice that are going to eat the seeds that have dropped to the ground. Those are food supplies for your snakes. You want to reduce cover in your landscape. You want to mow closely around homes and buildings. You don't want the grass to get really high. Besides having insect problems, you're going to end up having tick problems and flea problems. You may also end up having snakes in there because you've got mice and rats, moles, voles. Those are all food sources for snakes. So you're going to have snakes up closer to your homes and your buildings. Make sure that you're storing firewood and lumber away from your house and not, especially not against your house. I know that we want to put the firewood there because it's easy access. You know, it's cold getting out there to go get firewood, but you don't want it up against your house because you are creating shelter that you're going to have other pests and may end up having snakes. Also, you want to reduce the mulch layer in the beds around your house to discourage small animals and insects. So we recommend that your mulch beds, whether it's pine straw or bark mulch, we want those to be 2 to 3 inches deep. If you get it any deeper, you tend to hold a little bit too much moisture. It could be bad for the plants, but it's also a warm, wet environment for insects and other small animals, which could encourage snakes to come in. If you'll look at the picture on the right, the bottom right, you're going to see holes that coming into a structure. You want to close those cracks and crevices in your buildings, around pipes and utility connections with 1/4 inch hardware cloth. You don't want to use spray foam. Spray foam can dry rot. So the hardware cloth is actually going to be more durable. You want to make sure that you've got tight fitting screens on your windows. Was it Dani or was it TJ? It was Dani talking about having a snake in between the window and the screen at her house. He said it was like a little puppet show with a snake in between there. So you want to make sure that you've got your screens are tight fitting on your windows. Now, the take-home message of all of this is that, you know, we always hear that the only good snake is a bad snake, and that's not true. Snakes are actually extremely important components of our ecosystems, and altogether they are beneficial because they do control so many other pests in and around our landscapes. So don't just go out and kill these things. I realize that it scares you whenever you first see it. You're kind of startled, but they're actually serving a good purpose out there, and these things are free pest control for us. So we want to facilitate them around us and keep them around. So I got a lot of information from the University of Georgia's Savannah River Ecology Lab. That's SREL. They've got an awesome snake website. And then I got a bunch of information from NC State and also the Florida Museum of Natural History. And now we've got questions.
Hey, Vicky, a lot of the questions have been answered there from the question and answer box and the chat.
Oh, good deal.
Does anyone, hold on, there's some coming in. Here's one right now. If you find a snake nest or population and it's close to your home or your people, is it okay to dispose of them, or is there a better way to keep them away?
Really and truly, I kind of think it depends on what kind of snakes they are. You don't, either way, you don't want to encourage them to be up near your home. I would likely call a wildlife removal service and have them remove the snakes. Pest control operators, some of them will do it also, but a lot of times it would be better to call a nuisance wildlife removal service. And you can get those numbers from your local Department of Natural Resources.
And here's one. I've seen barriers put up around posts below bluebird houses. Mm-hmm. Are the barriers effective?
Yeah, those baffles actually do a really good job. So the baffles are doing several things. They're keeping snakes out. They're keeping fire ants out. Sometimes they're keeping other rodents out. And a lot of folks, the Bluebird Society, are opting to have multiple baffles to make it more difficult. And one of the things is you've got to make sure that it's high enough, because if you've got a very mature rat snake or a mature corn snake, these things are long. So sometimes they can kind of make a hump over the baffle and get around the baffle. So you've got to make sure that your baffles are set far apart enough and are high enough on the pole to keep them out of your bird houses.
Let's see. Ooh, a lot of thank yous. And yes, he said, don't coral snakes have round eyes? And yes, that was part of the chat earlier. That was one of the exceptions to that rule. So thank you for that question.
Coral snakes are different whenever most of our identifying characteristics between venomous and non-venomous, we're talking about vipers.
The vipers.
Yep.
So anyone else have questions? I'm going to go ahead and put these poll questions up. If anybody, can y'all see the poll? There we go. Those were great pictures, by the way.
I stole most of them.
Okay, she said, what about cottonmouths chasing humans?
Most of your snakes aren't going to chase humans. It may seem like they're chasing you, but they're not usually chasing you. A lot of them are going to be defensive, but not aggressive. There's a difference between being defensive and being aggressive. To us, it may seem like it's the same behavior, but if you break it down, it's two different behaviors.
Totally unsnake related. Did the extreme weather we just lived through affect the outlook for the Japanese beetle population?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to say probably not.
I'm going to say no on that one as well.
Yeah, in the long term, no. That's still something you're going to have to deal with. And remember, we don't recommend traps for Japanese beetles. If you buy them, put them in your neighbor's yard or somebody you don't like, because they're going to call in all the beetles from everywhere to that trap.
Now, this is a question you don't see every day. Is there a way to attract black snakes to my yard to kill voles?
Oh my, you can do all the stuff that I told you not to do earlier. So let the grass grow up, and but you can't, that's not going to guarantee that the black snakes are going to come and that nobody else is going to come. So be careful what you wish for.
Do all ERs have antivenom? Are they all stocked?
No. Sometimes they'll have to bring it in from neighboring hospitals. Usually your larger hospitals are going to be the ones that carry it. It's extremely expensive. Extremely, extremely expensive.
Is it true that copperheads will freeze rather than move out of the way when someone approaches?
A lot of your snakes they're going to stop, and they're going to attempt to not be visible. It's one of those things where yes. The answer is yes. I'm stuttering, but yes. So not everything is going to turn tail and haul as soon as they see something scary. Not all of them are going to become extremely defensive and start hissing and striking and showing out. So they have a number of defense strategies that they're going to try. So
here's another one. Oh, this one's about the boas in Southeast United States. Why are they so adaptable?
I don't know the answer why. I'm sure it's out there, but I don't know it. But I know that they are.
And then
unfortunately, they're doing really well.
So another question going back to the mothballs, which is something that you see and hear all over the place about the use of mothballs as a deterrent. And that's I would never advise that, but if you would like to go ahead and answer that question.
Properly, you cannot use mothballs as labeled for the ones that you pick up to put in your closet. Those are not labeled as snake repellent. The active ingredient is naphthalene, and you can buy products that have naphthalene as the active ingredient that are supposed to be used as repellents. But just so you know, those are not they're not long-term fixes. Those are short-term fixes. They're going to break down in the environment. You are going to have to reapply them. And just because something says that it is a repellent doesn't always mean that that individual that's coming in contact with it, that it's going to be repelled by it. So there are going to be some that say, you know what, that stinks, but I don't care. So it's one of those things where you would be better off utilizing strategies like reducing clutter, keeping your grass nice and short, not having shelter close to where you're going to be, reducing food resources, using strategies like that. A lot of times are going to be more effective than you trying to use a chemical.
And a lot of that food, water, shelter, it all comes down to that for most things, including humans.
And that's how you manage what most folks consider any kind of pest. You have to manage food, water, shelter.
And here is a question, and do copperheads smell like sliced cucumbers?
I have no idea, Gina. Is this like whenever you slice the snake itself, or is this just the snake out slithering doing its business? It smells like cucumbers? I have no idea.
I see one more. We've got time for one or two more, but here we go. Since coral snakes are not pit vipers, where is their venom stored?
They still have venom glands. I just think that they're not as pronounced. I have to look it up to be
anyone
sure.
Else? I think we got all of those. Thank you to the moderators today for getting all those questions and helping us out. That looks like everything. Y'all, we will see y'all next month. And Vicky, thank you so much for this presentation today.
You're very, very welcome.
We all enjoyed it. Y'all have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.